generational talent is different. Who are generationally talented quarterbacks to you?
I mean, present day or college kids?
If you go present
like in
day,
the NFL?
In the NFL, who's a
Lamar.
He ain't Lamar.
I'm not saying he's Lamar.
But it's the other thing, though. The people you're comparing him to, right? Like, let's just talk about the people you're comparing him to. You know what Lamar Jackson had by this point in college? A Heisman.
But Lamar played a lot more. He had stopped.
Because he was that good.
RC, Lamar's first start, he went 9 of 20 with a pick.
This is third start. Stop saying it's
against a real opponent.
It's his third.
Against a real opponent.
And also, too.
Okay, so we can go to
year in college.
But he hasn't played ball.
Because you know why? Because if you're Trevor Lawrence and you're a transcendent, generational quarterback talent, Kelly Bryant can be the incumbent starter. Take you to the...
Ryan Clark absolutely exploded on Dan Orlovsky, turning what should have been a routine debate into a full-on spectacle. Dan dared to throw shade at Shedeur before the Lions even stepped on the field, and Ryan answered with a fiery, no-filter takedown. This wasn't just sports talk, it was a roast, a rebuttal, and a meltdown rolled into one. Forget calm pre-game chatter, this was pure, uncut chaos, the kind of lit TV moment fans will be replaying for weeks.
Things got real heated in the ESPN studios as Ryan Clark completely destroyed Dan Orlovsky over his Arch Manning generational take. Now, we've seen Dan Orlovsky's bad take on Shedeur Sanders, and Ryan Clark has had enough. Well, guys, man, I'm here to tell you, man, it seems like Ryan Clark has had enough of Dan Orlovsky's bad takes when it comes to these quarterbacks. Now, we all seen and we've all heard Dan Orlovsky's take on Shedeur Sanders. We also seen him compare Dillon Gabriel to Shedeur Sanders. We also heard him come out of his own mouth and stated that Dillon Gabriel put out better game tape than Shedeur Sanders. And Ryan Clark has no hesitation of confronting him and going in on him and max ethering him over some of his takes when it comes to certain quarterbacks. Now, we all know what's going on. We all know what's going on in college right now. We all know what's going on. We got this Arch Manning hype train that's going on, talking about he is a generational talent. And a lot of people saying it's because of the namesake, the Manning sake. You know, you got the uncles and Eli and Peyton, but you got to understand something. Arch Manning's father was not even a quarterback. He was an athlete, but it's the Manning household name.
If you're enjoying, please subscribe Shedeur Sanders to the channel. It helps more than you think. The ESPN studio may never be the same after that eruption. Ryan Clark didn't just join the debate, he unleashed a full-on blitz. And the target? Dan Orlovsky, the quarterback analyst whose long list of shaky takes just got obliterated in real time. It wasn't a debate, it was a detonation everyone witnessed live.
Can you define to me what that means?
Well, generational talent would be that you have physical attributes that are rare and unique. When did 6'4", 225 pounds, 4'5", 4'6" in the 40?
None of those things.
100%. He's 100% 6'4", physical ability, let alone elite, rare bloodlines when it comes to the quarterback position.
It began as a simple chat about Arch Manning's generational potential. Harmless, right? Not even close. What should have been a calm discussion on hype versus talent spiraled into full-on fireworks. A routine segment instantly morphed into a heated showdown, leaving the set buzzing and viewers glued to every second.
Every chance Dan Orlovsky gets, he keeps on bigging up Arch Manning to make Arch Manning one of the greatest quarterbacks he's seen in college history. Now, there's a long list of quarterbacks that we can talk about in college that was great. But the thing about it is Dan Orlovsky's takes on these quarterbacks, because Dan Orlovsky was a quarterback himself. And like I stated to you guys, man, Dan Orlovsky likes mediocrity. He likes mediocre players because he was a mediocre quarterback himself. And Dan Orlovsky takes on these quarterbacks is downright asinine. And Ryan Clark wastes no time in destroying everything that he has to say about these quarterbacks.
Dan Orlovsky, bless him, leapt onto the Arch Manning hype train like a kid tasting candy for the first time. He confidently crowned Arch the next big thing, generational talent, future of football, the whole package. Across the desk, Ryan Clark just stared, a smirk creeping in as if to say, "Here we go, you're really about to step right into it."
Generational talent, then who is? And how are we measuring it? Because we can't sit there and go, because of the way the first start on the road.
There's very few of them. I think there's less than what you think. I think John Elway was a generational talent. I think Patrick Mahomes is a generational talent. I don't think Tom Brady, I don't think Drew Brees, I don't think Peyton Manning are generational talents. I think Andrew Luck ended up being a generational talent. I don't think there's a ton of them out there.
But so then what? Then how does one, in your eyes, be a generational talent? Because there's not a lot of difference.
You're about to cross the line of reality, and I'm going to enjoy every second of this. And then he did what he does best. He exposed the entire flawed system that lets mediocre former quarterbacks dictate who's elite and who's overrated. Let's set the stage. Orlovsky starts rattling off stats like a kid reciting a grocery list. 6'4", 225 pounds, runs 21 miles per hour on GPS. Clark, calm as ever, stops him right there and drops the truth bomb. You don't need a speedometer on a quarterback to know if he can dominate on the field. Arch Manning running the football is not the same as Lamar Jackson turning defenders into pretzels. And in that moment, you could almost see Orlovsky's soul leave his body. The genius of Clark's response isn't just in the numbers. It's in the principle. Mediocre quarterbacks love mediocrity. That's science. They see themselves in average performances, mistake potential for actual talent, and feel compelled to defend hype over substance. Orlovsky has spent years doing exactly that. He downgrades actual elite quarterbacks and props up unproven prospects, all while acting like he's the gatekeeper of generational greatness. And Clark? He just walked in with a sledgehammer and dismantled the gate. But let's be real. This wasn't just about Arch Manning, although he was the bait on the hook.
Following up on, in fact, RC, I thought you described it very well in our meeting this morning, what it is they are and aren't doing.
Yeah, what it is that they're doing is they're treating Shedeur Sanders like a fifth-round pick. Right? We're not covering every fifth-round pick in the NFL, hoping that he gets an opportunity to be the starter on day one. We felt like, oh my goodness, they got a diamond in the rough. Shedeur Sanders fell to the 5th round. They felt like they evaluated him there, and that's where they picked him. And they're playing the guy.
The real victim here? Shedeur Sanders, the quarterback who's been proving himself at every level, carrying programs on his back, and still getting shrugged at by analysts who wouldn't recognize elite talent if it hit them in the face. Clark didn't even have to mention Shedeur directly. By tearing apart Orlovsky's logic, he highlighted exactly why guys like Shedeur get underrated while 3-star wonders get labeled generational. Now, here's where it gets spicy. Clark starts calling out Orlovsky's credibility. And then comes the line that will live in sports media infamy forever: "I don't care what this little vest you wear on top of your nipples say." Boom. Mic dropped. The absurdity of Orlovsky sitting there, trying to defend numbers, analytics, and hype while being obliterated by logic and experience, is almost cartoonish. It's like watching a guy build a sandcastle right before a tsunami. Only the tsunami is Ryan Clark, and he brought receipts. And the receipts are devastating. Clark points to real generational quarterbacks: Trevor Lawrence, Caleb Williams, Lamar Jackson. These are players who force immediate change, who don't wait their turn, who don't sit behind backups and collect likes on Instagram. They dominate. They transform teams. They make coaches and fans and analysts eat their words. And then there's Shedeur Sanders, walking into programs like Jackson State and Colorado, flipping the script, and somehow still being talked down. It's absurd. It's infuriating.
Well, everybody stop with the Shedeur Sanders is being set up to fail narrative. Who do you want to start the game? It's preseason week 1. First option, Joe Flacco. He's played for like 20 years. He's not going to start preseason week 1. The next 2 options would be a Kenny Pickett or a Dylan Gabriel. Both are dealing with hamstring injuries. Neither has practiced a ton recently. If they've done anything, I believe it's been 7-on-7. Who do you want to start the game? The next 2 options are Shedeur and Snoop Huntley. Shedeur's been there. Snoop Huntley just got there.
And it's hilarious if you're watching Orlovsky squirm. Here's where the sarcasm levels hit critical mass. Orlovsky tries to explain away the narrative gap with nil money, like that's a legitimate reason a quarterback can't assert dominance. Clark doesn't even flinch. Generational talent doesn't wait for contracts. It doesn't negotiate with mediocrity. It rises, forces decisions, and makes people acknowledge it, whether they like it or not. Shedeur Sanders has done exactly that. Coaches have had no choice but to adapt to his presence, programs have been elevated, and fans suddenly care about teams that were irrelevant last season. Meanwhile, Orlovsky is still clutching his little vest, measuring speed, and trying to justify hype over production. The beauty of this moment is that Clark didn't just defend Shedeur. He exposed a whole systemic problem. Analysts like Orlovsky create narratives based on bloodlines, hype, and personal biases. They mistake potential for proven skill, and they prop up players with zero track record while tearing down those who consistently perform at elite levels. And it's not subtle. It's glaring. It's embarrassing. And Clark? He makes it look effortless. Imagine being Orlovsky at that moment. You've spent your career analyzing quarterbacks, throwing around stats like confetti, and suddenly a former NFL player who actually knows what high-level play looks like starts calling out every flaw in your methodology. You start trying to backtrack, mention different eras, throw in excuses about competition or nil deals, but it's too late. The narrative is crumbling.
Shedeur moves slowly, kind of trying to see what's going on, and then that creates that sack fumble. So a lot of the stuff that we just saw in college is a big deal. This ball gets snapped at the 48-yard line. Defense has won the rep. Play is dead. Throw the ball away.
Yep.
It's first down. But instead we run and it's a 2.5, 3-yard loss. So instead of being 2nd and 10, we're 2nd and 13. We're dead. Again, here's the opportunity to throw the juke route. Hold, scramble. So some of those things that I was and others were concerned about on the college tape showed itself again. This is not the end of the world, though. This is part of his development in becoming a potential starting quarterback.
The audience is watching. Your credibility is evaporating faster than a snowflake in the sun. And yet, the comedy keeps flowing. Clark doesn't just hit the numbers, he hits the logic. If Arch Manning is considered generational based on 3 career starts, what does that say about the evaluation of guys who have consistently proven themselves? Shedeur Sanders doesn't have to show up for highlights to prove it. The stats are there. The wins are there. The clutch plays are there. He elevates programs instantly. But the media machine? It looks the other way, hyping the hype while minimizing reality. The irony here is delicious. Orlovsky, the guy whose job is to evaluate quarterbacks, gets schooled on what real talent looks like while still trying to lecture the audience on potential and hype. Clark systematically dismantles the flawed logic that undervalues elite players like Shedeur and overvalues mediocrity. Every example he uses is a knockout punch: Caleb Williams taking over from a projected starter, Trevor Lawrence forcing coaching changes, Lamar Jackson turning games into highlight reels. Generational talent doesn't wait, it forces recognition. And the audience watching Orlovsky squirm knows it. It's beautiful chaos. And the narrative extends beyond just one player or one analyst. This is about the entire sports media system. Players like Shedeur Sanders face uphill battles every single day because narratives are easier than actual evaluation.
My analysis on Shedeur Sanders, for the people that messaged me Uncle Tom or commented fool, I do want to say something to you sincerely from the bottom of my heart, and that's kiss my ass. I'm not going to holler sabotage and racism when I don't truly believe something is sabotage and racism. I did have a problem with the way Shedeur Sanders was covered in the pre-draft process. The anonymous reports demeaning a young man's character who had never done anything wrong away from the field, had never shown anything but leadership.
Analysts cling to biases and history and bloodlines rather than giving credit where it's due. Clark just peeled back the curtain, exposing it all. And the best part? He did it without even needing Shedeur's name front and center. By exposing Orlovsky, he exposed the bias, the absurdity, and the double standards that plague the system. Now, let's talk about the fallout. Orlovsky tries to salvage face by pointing to physical measurables, GPS speed, or whatever vest he's wearing. Clark doesn't flinch. You can't measure heart, poise, or the ability to transform a program with a speedometer. And you certainly can't justify calling someone generational with 3 starts while undermining a player who consistently dominates. That little vest joke wasn't just funny, it was devastating. It summed up the absurdity of letting analytics and hype overshadow actual performance. The humor here writes itself. Imagine being Orlovsky, trying to defend a narrative while being shredded in front of millions. Every excuse he makes, different era, nil, limited experience, is met with calm, devastating logic. Clark systematically proves that true talent forces recognition. It doesn't wait. It doesn't negotiate. It doesn't rely on hype. And Shedeur Sanders is living proof of that. He walks into a struggling program, turns it around, makes clutch plays, earns respect from teammates older than him, and still gets undervalued by the media. Comedy gold. And then comes the real kicker. Clark points out the absurdity of labeling someone generational after 3 starts. Generational talent, by definition, dominates immediately, forces change, and leaves an impact that can't be ignored. Caleb Williams, Trevor Lawrence, Lamar Jackson, they all did it.
So while Shedeur may not have had reps with the ones, what else do you want them to do in Cleveland? It's an opportunity for him. It may not be the ideal opportunity. Very rarely is it for a 5th round pick, but it's an opportunity for him to go out there and do in a game what many have reported he's done in practice. Stop with the setup to fail narrative.
Shedeur Sanders? Same story. Orlovsky? Sitting there, measuring speed, missing the forest for the trees. The irony is perfect. The comedy is perfect. The frustration for anyone who's a real fan of the game? Immeasurable. By the end, you realize this wasn't just about Arch Manning, or Shedeur Sanders, or even Dan Orlovsky. It was about calling out an entire flawed system. Analysts like Orlovsky are supposed to provide insight, context, and accurate evaluation. Instead, they perpetuate narratives, hype the unproven, and undermine those who prove themselves. Clark dismantled that entire framework in one sitting, showing what happens when someone with credibility, experience, and truth on their side decides to hold the mirror up. And the most satisfying part? Clark didn't even need to shout. He didn't need to exaggerate beyond reason. He simply laid out logic, examples, and truths that are undeniable. Trevor Lawrence took over from established starters. Caleb Williams forced coaching changes. Lamar Jackson dominated from day one. Shedeur Sanders transformed programs, made elite plays, and still faced bias. And Orlovsky? Well, he got shown how flimsy his analysis really was. Watching this unfold is a masterclass in sports media accountability. It's also comedy gold. Orlovsky trying to recover, stammering, explaining away numbers and hype, while Clark methodically exposes the flawed logic behind every argument. It's like watching a slow-motion train wreck, if the train was full of bad quarterback takes and someone was throwing truth grenades left and right.
Here's what that means. Multiple teams, 32 teams, passed on him multiple times. And now you want me to say the one team that did decide to draft him doesn't have his best interests at heart. The thing is, he was a 5th round draft pick. 5th round draft picks get 5th round treatment, even if we don't feel like they deserve to be drafted in the 5th round. So you're gonna play with some guys who don't make the team. You know who else you're gonna play against? some guys that don't make the team.
You can't look away. You want to look away, but the chaos is too satisfying. By the time Clark finished, Orlovsky's credibility was in shambles. And the audience knew it. Every analyst, every fan, everyone watching realized something critical. If you rely on Orlovsky to tell you who's elite and who isn't, you might as well be flipping a coin. Real talent doesn't need hype. Real talent produces. Real talent forces recognition. And Shedeur Sanders? He's the embodiment of that principle. And that's why this moment will live forever in sports media lore. Clark didn't just defend a player, he defended the idea that talent should be recognized, performance should matter, and mediocrity should not get a free pass just because someone likes their best or their stats look pretty on paper. He held a mirror to the system, and the reflection was brutal, hilarious, and satisfying. So, the next time you hear an analyst hyping up a 3-star quarterback while downplaying someone who's consistently elite, remember this. Remember the chaos. Remember the little vest moment. Remember Ryan Clark systematically dismantling the credibility of someone who thought he knew what he was talking about.